Welcome back to PodRocket, a web development podcast brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket provides AI-first session replay and analytics, which surface the UX and technical issues impacting user experiences. Start understanding where your users are struggling by trying it for free at logrocket.com. Hey everyone, I'm your host today, Paige Niedringhouse, and we are back today on the LogRocket podcast to have a panelist episode where we'll be talking about AI agents, reshaping developer workflows, the browser's changing role in the web ecosystem, and new pressures on open source software. But before we get into it, let's welcome our other panelists. So first up, we have Jack Harrington, blue-collar coder on YouTube and also a co-host of the Front End Fire podcast.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you back, Jack. We have Paul Mikulskis, a PodRocket host as well and a YouTuber.
Howdy.
With that, we also have Noel Minshaw, who is a software engineer at LogRocket. Glad to have you, Noel.
Yeah. Hey, Paige.
All right. So let's get right into the news because there is plenty to talk about. The first thing that we're going to talk about, which has kind of been sweeping the tech industry for about the last month plus at this point, is OpenClaw. The thing that we want to talk about in particular is that OpenClaw is moving to the foundation, and its creator has also joined OpenAI. But for those of you who are not as familiar with OpenClaw, it has been a breakout open source autonomous agent project that really took off at the beginning of 2026. And it is transitioning to a foundation now for long-term governance. And at the same time, its creator, Peter Steinberger, is joining OpenAI. So typically, when you move a project like this into a foundation, it's often meant to ensure neutrality, stability, and community stewardship. When the original creator leaves for a proprietary AI company, that raises some questions about continuity, influence, and the broader trend of talent flowing into the large AI labs, which we've seen a lot of in the last couple of years, and highlights how quickly some successful open source project can become a part of the larger AI ecosystem. So the first question that we wanted to talk about is a foundation the best long-term home for fast-growing open source AI projects? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, it is good that they're trying to create like a neutral spot. I mean, the biggest thing for me about OpenClaw is I love it, but trying to figure out the security concerns because it's already become like a malware haven in terms of, skills that, leak all your secrets and all kinds of stuff like that. So, having some folks that are actually like trying to figure out that problem is going to be super helpful. And then I think OpenClaw is just a fantastic platform. I use it myself for doing all kinds of fun stuff.
I'm really curious about your answers, Jack and Noel, because I have less immediate touch points with open source projects. In our last podcast, we quite deliberately talked about how the economics of running an open source project is changing. Is this sort of like a needle moving moment because it's so big and he got swept up so quickly by such a big player?
It astonishes me how fast this has gone. Like, you talk about other open source projects and like the foundations, like React just did its foundation and that was 10 years in the making. I think, but I do think that part of that is because of, it was hosted within a company. Right. This is literally just some dude, and his rights and his software. So that's a whole lot easier play when it comes to transferring that intellectual property. And I think it's just a good idea. Like if he's going to join OpenAI, it was a smart play to basically say, hey, listen, because otherwise it would look like OpenAI is just gobble, gobble, gobble. Like, yeah, thank you very much. We'll take that. Like they were going to own it. And I think that OpenClaw would have been forked. Somebody would have gone and created a different version of it. And it just would have been a pain in the butt in the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like an optics thing kind of to some extent, like that motivated a lot of it. I'm a little bit naive here. I don't know exactly how much code like OpenClaw even really is, like how much it's stitching together. So to the fork point, maybe this is just kind of like the first iteration of one of these things, and it may not end up being the one that is the one that people end up using anyway. But I think positioning it so it can be a platform that evolves. I also haven't looked at like the contributor graph or anything. Like I don't know how many people are working on it. I'm not sure the shape. So I think that the foundation decision depends a lot on the context of the project, who is working on it, and kind of what their motivations are. Like it can be in a foundation, it could still go terribly awry, or it could not be in a foundation and everything could be fine with the right stewardship. But I don't think it's like inherently hurting anything.
I've been personally surprised when I installed it. I thought it was like a joke, and I was like,
it was like the marketing air quotes.
Oh yeah, no, the marketing's like, totally gives you the joke vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you bring it up and it's like, oh wow, this is actually like really well architected. It can spawn sub agents. You can have like you can have a grid of these things. I mean, there's like it's a harness, but I think there's a lot of stuff underneath there that's actually really cool. And I've just been surprised by my interactions with it. Like I have it on my Discord in a private DM, and it was having some issues with the cron job, and it's like, okay, maybe we should just update you, and it's like, okay, I'll do that myself, thanks. It came back a couple seconds later, and it's like, okay, I'm at the newest version, maybe it'll work this time. I'm like, okay, I guess that's a thing. Mm-hmm. Sure, go for it.
Are you running it kind of in like isolate somewhere? Is it on a VM or you're running it?
I run it on my local NAS.
Nice. Yeah.
I have a Mac Studio that I very rarely use. I only use it for recordings. And so I've decided I'm just going to use my laptop for everything. And I'm going to turn the Mac Studio into an OpenClaw /Olama /Home Assistant, blah, 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 blah thing. And it's got like 128. I super stocked that thing. So it's got like 128 gigs RAM and blah, blah, blah. So, and it's, it would be a really good box for that. So, and that's kind of interesting because now I'll be able to actually run OpenClaw as just like a 7dB model, right? And I won't even have to pay for, Anthropic or whatever, unless I want to, which is kind of weird.
Do you think that this project is going to continue to depend a lot on its original creator for direction and kind of for trust, or is it just that it rose to prominence so quickly and then Peter got hired by OpenAI that it developed a life of its own very quickly and maybe doesn't need it as much as some of the other projects that have become part of foundations and part of the Linux open source groups?
I don't know. I feel like the market's too new. Like there's just so many unknowns here. Like we don't know how people are going to use it long term. We don't know like the kind of the business of it. Like maybe there could be a couple large incidents where we've determined people who are using this who aren't doing due diligence, things have gone awry and there's like huge data dumps and leaks and stuff. Like I'm just not sure.
I definitely think that there is a hosting element here that you're going to see some company do. I think maybe Cloudflare actually was talking about like lightweight OpenClaw hosting, that
click
kind of thing. So
click
a button and now you got your personal assistant and you just kind of like, okay, I want it on my calendar and I want it on my mail. I don't do any of that, by the way. My stuff is all like, I have it doing research for me. Like that's my little off in the corner thing. No, it goes off once a day and tries to find articles on front end stuff. And then at 5:00 in the morning, I get this cool, like, report of, look at all this stuff that's happening. And that's all I've ever wanted it for. And I will integrate it in Home Assistant so I can like talk to it and say, hey, listen, turn on the lights or whatever, that kind of thing. But, I'm not going to do that. But I would say like the hosting angle is kind of cool. Like if I'm just random normie and I want something that's going to go and, monitor my email because it's overwhelming. Yeah, that's kind of cool to host it. Yeah.
Random normie, and then Jack's also precursoring this with no. I don't do that. I don't do that. And I think that sheds light too on like the OpenClaw was the first moment where I listened to a YouTuber say, so are you going to be in the ruling AI class? And I took it not as a joke.
Oh,
wow. I was just like, like the way OpenClaw is being received is the first time this flashlight has really been shown on like, this is not for everybody. It's just not. And there's going to be this glass ceiling of people who use AI, and there's going to be people who build AI. And that doesn't mean you're a programmer, a technical individual per se. It just means you can digest at the level that's required to use the tool at that caliber that keeps you safe. And like that boundary is never going to be in a controlled, like, oh yeah, you can do all of this stuff and still be safe. There's the spread of authentication and authorization, changing tokens. Like, okay, if you're somebody who has an never expiring, universally accessible GitHub personal access token, it's not for you. You should be rotating your tokens. And that just requires some finesse. It'll be interesting. But this is really the first time that defining line has really come to light.
And it's so interesting that you say that, Paul, because that reminds me of what I've heard before about people in Silicon Valley, where they will not let their children have phones, or they will not let them be on the platforms that they themselves work for, the companies that they work for. I think it's that exact same thing of you as a developer or a person who is in tech understand the risks and the addictive nature, the openness to getting hacked, of personal information leaking out. But all the people who don't, who figure out or get AI to help them set up an OpenClaw and just let it go, that's why we're seeing already massive malware breaches and improperly stored data and stuff leaking on Discord servers and WhatsApp channels and everything else, because they're just cutting it up and connecting it and then giving it access to their email and giving it access to their bank accounts and everything else. And that's, like you said, if you know better, if you're a security expert or even just in tech in general, you're like, do not do this. There are no guardrails that can protect you at this point from that kind of stuff happening. But the general population and public don't think about that or aren't aware that's actually what can happen or what will happen or what is happening.
And like, of course, there's steps that you can take to make accessing your calendar and your bank account okay. There's a lot you need to do. There's a lot of isolation. Like you need to make sure things are isolated. You need to make sure there's authentication and authorization to activate conversations of that caliber. That's why we're also seeing OpenClaws get deployed. People don't just have one. They'll have like a Jax OpenClaw, and then they'll have everyone does your email and calendar and bank, and that one's super locked down, and they can somehow talk to each other. I've seen a couple setups like that. But even so, that's complicated. And I guarantee in 2 months, it's going to be archaic. You're going to forget how it works. Yeah, there's an interesting line here. Because I'm sure a lot of people, like 80% of their needs are going to be satisfied with the new Siri that comes out. You know, it's going to be pretty good. I reckon it's going to be pretty damn good. So checking my email and calendar, I'll leave that. Yeah, it's going to be Gemini. Sure.
I know. We're encroaching on my hot take here. I've got to save it. I've got thoughts about how the interfaces for these things are going to evolve in the future. So we'll see.
I like your point though about the haves and the have-nots of this. It's like, if you have the wherewithal to get, a $200 a month subscription to AI, and you want to get a really good internship in medical school or something like that, and you can then set up OpenClaw and have it go and email all the right people and do all that stuff that somebody without it can't do, or just like, just literally like they don't have the bandwidth for that sort of thing. Like you're just leveled up against other people, and that's an interesting, that's an interesting.
Like I've never been a routine note taker until like I read this blog post by the CEO of Obsidian, and I was like, I've been doing this way too complicatedly and too difficult. Let's restart. Just throw every note in the root of my folder, and you're growing the second brain. And like, whether it be an OpenClaw manifestation of this, whether it be an Obsidian, whether it be like, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not at that point yet, just organizing your emails with filters and labels is just like such a step forward in the right direction of like compiling this like digital corpus of who you are and sorting it, because most of us don't sort. And that goes into the haves and have-nots. Do you digitally organize your brain?
Yeah.
Because if it's not organized, AI is not going to help too much.
Or are you even thinking of ways that you could use AI to do these things? Because that's the other thing that I've realized just talking to friends and family who are not in the tech industry, is that they are not even aware of what is going on in terms of AI progress and how people are using it in their day-to-day or in their jobs or what have you. They've maybe heard of OpenClaw, maybe, if they're really plugged into it. Probably not, as Jack's shaking his head. No, they have no idea about it. And that's true. I was talking to my brother-in-law, and he runs a small business. He's a gym owner, and he was talking about all these things that he has to do for the business, like payroll and billing clients and making sure his coaches get paid and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there listening to him, and I'm like, you could have an AI agent who's doing your standard procedures for when everybody comes into the gym in the morning and they get everything started and going. You could have something set up that's like doing your billing or putting stuff together for who gets paid what every week. There are so many things where you could just be using AI to do it faster, make it easier, have stuff set up for you and ready to go, but they're not even thinking at that level. And I think that's exactly what you're getting at, Paul, is people who are thinking about this and who are in it every day, I guess, like us, are like, how can we optimize? And other people are just like, just living life, going about it as they have up until now without even thinking about how they could potentially use this to their advantage.
It's like a pathfinding brain. I guess like if you're walking, taking a hike and there's a bunch of leaves and fall and you're really into skiing. I'm just thinking about skiing now because it's winter. And you look at the leaves and you're just like, yeah, I could ski. Like nobody who doesn't ski a lot is going to look at a bunch of wet leaves and go like, yeah, I could ski that. But that sort of like lens on everything just being cast. And you're just like, how could AI be applied to that? And it's just a learned muscle over.
Which I think,
okay, I want to pay first off to see you ski leaves. I whatever GoFundMe to do that, I'm in. But it's funny you mentioned that about like like regular people not knowing AI, because I was kind of surprised by this. I was over at a Super Bowl party for my next door neighbor. My next door neighbor is like a drug rep. He knows nothing about AI, like literally. And then his kid, who, from what I can tell, like has a job like delivering weed to dispensaries. He's like, oh my God, man, I got to get myself a Mac Mini so I can run OpenClaw. I'm like, who are you? Like, what? What? Like, open? You know, it's like I just like 2 days before I'd set up my own OpenClaw instance, and I'm like, oh my God, like nobody in my neighborhood would even think about doing any of this. But no, this like rando kid, 20-year-olds, like, yeah, I guess it's all over Reddit or whatever. Like they're like,
probably whatever their TikTok algorithm is.
Yeah, they're all buying Mac Minis and I guess using them to like, do their Bitcoin, like their whatever. Gas. Yeah. Weird.
I was going to say before, I think if someone is in an engineering kind of mindset already, in whatever paradigm they're in, or they're in that like, how do I apply a given tool to help me solve problems more effectively? I think they're kind of like more curious about this and into that a little bit more. It's still a new thing. I think we discount how long it takes people to change their routines and habits. And it's just like, I don't know, even simple stuff like extracting text from images, where I'm just like, this is like assault. I just throw this into whatever. Like you pick your LLM interface of choice. It's like, okay, we can do this like so effectively now. But I think most people still aren't doing that. They're not applying these tools yet. And this is compounding very quickly. So I empathize with the problem.
I guess one final question or one kind of additional question is, how should developers evaluate the stability of the projects they build on? Because this has gone into a foundation in record time. We've all just said how dangerous it is in the wrong hands of people who are untrained or unskilled in it. And yet, I bet there's tons of things that are built on top of it already that are using OpenClaw under the hood or some variation of it. So how do developers evaluate if this is something that they should get into or not?
I think it depends on the domain and the problem, right? Are you in a domain where there's margins of error, like that this is acceptable? Like I think that's kind of the game right now, is like
how high are the stakes?
How tight does this need to be? If it fails, what does failure look like?
Yeah.
So it's hard to speak broadly, but
I think AI agents change this equation a lot.
Yeah.
You've got, like, let's say you're on some open source project or on some, company project, and you bring in some random library and it falls over or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. I mean, just literally fire up the agent and you're like, okay, now this is the project that we want to be on. Go and make those changes and it'll whip up a PR for you. And now you be over on that project. It's like, it's not that big of a deal anymore. Like a lot of these problems that we kind of think of these huge bugbears, like doing like lift and shift operations from Angular to React. I mean, they get a lot easier when you just start like throwing agents at them. They just like get so much easier. Like just really changes the equations a lot.
I also look for like common denominators, and I'm thinking of OpenClaw and Eliza as two examples. Two AI frameworks that kind of do similar things. Under the hood, it's the same shit, honestly. They just like connect stuff. But there's a reason why I invest time in OpenClaw, but after reading a bit through Eliza, you're like, I'm not sure. It's because there's too many like sharp edges of like how it was originally built at the time, 6 months ago when I was looking at it, versus OpenClaw. You're like, oh, this is just an off the shelf like integration connector. That common denominator makes me feel a little safer. I don't know what's going to happen to this. And I think that's the new framing, is like, I have no idea what's going to happen to something anymore. So it's not, how easy does this make my life, or how custom is it? It's how many common denominators can I find for when it inevitably gets messed up and then I have to like go somewhere else? Because then, Jack, that whole process you described is not like a pseudo guru science. Common denominators.
There, I like it. Yeah. You know, what is this void? And I think that's it's interesting that like we now have discovered this like new void for people that like, oh, you know, I could really use a personal assistant. You know, okay, all right, well, yeah.
It's just kind of like when AI first burst onto the scene, everybody's like, we got to put AI in our project. So you're making up reasons for AI of some sort to be in your application, your product, whatever. And now we're doing it with OpenClaw. We're like, people didn't have personal assistants before, and somehow they muddled through life. But now that they can, they're like, go out and find all the front end news for me and give me a nice roundup of it every day, or go do Bitcoin mining and tell me how often I need to be buying and selling and shorting and longing and stuff like that. And it's just, yeah, it's interesting, but is it adding value to our lives?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is it adding value? Is it doing actual intelligent things that cause my prefrontal cortex to allow it to go somewhere else? Because even if it can compile news, I would want to make sure that I don't have to do a lot of work on the tail end to sift through the news and consume the news, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a balancing act depending on what you use it for. Like, Jack, you're getting news every morning. I hope it's pretty good news and that you don't spend a lot of effort sorting through the news, that's great.
Because I've contextualized it so it knows who I am. It knows, you know, what I'm looking for from this news. I mean, it literally like, and I you know, we've talked through, okay, here's how you should like take a look and make sure that it's not AI generated slop, because there's so many generated AI slop articles on like Medium and all that sort of stuff. So it basically comes up with, I don't know, 20 or 30 cool things a day, and then it kind of filters that down and it gives me basically, oh, if you were going to do a video on this, here's the angle for that video. And it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. It's genuinely nice. But the cool thing is, the reason I'm okay with it is because I didn't have it before and now I have it. And if it went away, it'd be like, oh, okay, you know, that's fine. But if it's handling my bills and stuff like that, I don't know, because at the end of the day, all these things break, you know, and if I lose the ability to understand like how to do my bills, like that's a problem, man. Like, or how to turn on a light in my house, right? So, you know, there are extents to like what the amount of stuff that I'll give off to AI, and it's mostly kind of like, I don't know, non-mission critical things. That's where I'm at with AI.
It's almost
at least
like
in this context.
Nuclear fusion quotient. It's like the energy you put in has to be less than the energy you get out. And here we're talking about prefrontal thinking energy. There's lots of things that go into that equation. Am I familiar with the system after using automation? That's a good one. Like, do I have to sort after I get the outputs? And it just changes for every single surface that you try to point it at. We're in the soup now. I'm sure it'll be less soupy as time goes on.
I think it is hard to determine. Even like a less direct example, right? Like if you're working in a project that's been heavily assistant generated, not even necessarily vibe coded. There's a lot of code generated, and like you're maybe reviewing most of it as it goes through, but you're not like writing it yourself. So it's not internalized to the same degree. So you need to go in and change something later. It's like, if the agents are failing for whatever reason, then it's like, okay, now I've got to like kind of figure this out. I think that iterative process can take a little bit longer, but so it's hard to like do that math. You don't know when you're stumbling into one of those corners right now because the variables are changing so quickly on the efficacy of the models and like what can be fixed and what can't, and when you have to go in and get your hands dirty still. So I think it's hard to know.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that. Let's talk about one other thing. So there were two major developments that happened this month that kind of highlight how the browser is changing, or the role of the browser is changing in different ways. On the one hand, we had Interop 2026, which is an initiative that shows major browser vendors coordinating on shared priorities. So they're improving compatibility, they're reducing fragmentation across the web platform, and the collaboration has helped to make modern features safer to use across different engines. But the latest report also highlights some persistent gaps. For example, the advanced CSS attribute function that is still largely Chromium only, while features like contrast color are stronger in Firefox and Safari. Container style queries remain bottlenecked seemingly forever by incomplete support in Firefox, and web compatibility issues like module edge cases and scroll timing remain a major focus. So there are newer capabilities like the Web Transport API, and they're also getting coordinated attention as real-time web apps become more common. But on the other hand, Google has announced new Gemini-powered capabilities in Chrome so that the browser can navigate websites, it can complete tasks for a user. Instead of simply rendering pages, the browser can now act as the autonomous agent interacting with the web for you. So the question is, are browsers becoming more unified platforms for building the web, or are they diverging into AI-powered assistants that really mediate the web for users? So do you think that we're entering a new era of browser cooperation or competition when you think about these two kind of opposing forces that are at work?
I'm super dubious on the browser automation stuff because a web interface is designed to be a interaction point that minimizes, it's the tip of the spear of whatever system you're interacting with that should ideally be perfectly crafted to minimize your inputs at the point of key decisions. So if you're telling me like, dear Claude and Chrome plugin, that like there's a delta between my key decisions I need to make and how that interface works, in my mind, that's a problem with the interface that's going to coalesce over time, or it should. Now, we live in the real world. That's not how it is. I'm sure there's a delta and it can help me with some things. But the thought that this is a core infrastructural change in how we leverage the browser feels like a patch rather than next step, having the next step be slightly incorrect framing.
If we're viewing it from that lens, the browser is not the correct abstraction, right? Like, it's kind of crazy to be thinking that we're like, okay, we have a visual interface for interacting with things, which one could argue that the web isn't supposed to be, but I think the browser, by and large now, we can say is like a visual medium for interacting with data. And like, it seems like a ridiculous world we're living in if the main consumer of the visual medium becomes a computer.
Yeah, I mean, I love what I'm seeing is kind of like this half step that we're doing in here, which is like WebMCP. So the idea being that like you have an API that's kind of in the page that then the AI can kind of talk to behind the scenes that gives it a more programmatic interface. And I mean, there's just a lot of sites out there, right? And they're not going to quickly move around so that they can give agents access to stuff. But if there's some lightweight mechanism like this WebMCP where they can kind of give it like a half step of like, oh, okay, like on a weekend's worth of work, I can go and make it so that our site is much more, accurately searchable and usable by an agent. Yeah, I think that's cool, actually. I saw it. Optimistic, but I mean, hey, you got to go to where the people are, and the people are in the browser right now. So, or on their phones or whatever.
So, do you think that eventually we're going to have to design for AI agents first instead of people? The way that we're trying to automate things, that we're adding Gemini, we're adding whatever Claude to our browsers, is that something that developers and designers will need to think about more as a first step instead of an afterthought or a nice to have kind of thing?
Definitely. But I think that we'll have some either framework features or libraries that are on top of the frameworks that are doing things like we've already talked about, like offline mode. So you've got frameworks that handle like offline stuff and caching really well. Like this just seems like another thing where it's like, okay, if I model my data correctly, then it'll be really easy to put a table on it in HTML. But behind the scenes, I can just literally like say, okay, I want a tool that like makes this table accessible by AI. and it's just boom, done. It just adds it to, the web MCP or whatever kind of integration points there are with AI. And it just becomes a framework feature that, a really good framework's going to just support those kind of cool new features.
Do you think that agentic browsing reduces the importance of cross-browser compatibility? Does Firefox need to be in support the same in lockstep with whatever Chrome is doing or Edge is doing, if the agent, whoever it is, whatever agent it might be, knows about these differences or is aware and doesn't and can work around them, do you think?
I feel like the browser question is just, they're going to coalesce over time. Like, this is a act of work and labor of why we have the differences we have in business roadmap objectives and North Stars and what the product means. The CSS thing, I'm like, this is a non-issue. Like, it is an issue. I understand. But over time, it's like that margin is going to close. And it's the same thing.
It has been already, right? Like,
yeah,
I think we're talking about, increasingly like fringy stuff when we talk about like, browser differences now, where it feels like go back, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And it was like,
it was a war zone.
Significant.
It was a crazy. Yeah. Now it's like pretty good. There's like some stuff here and there. So I think it's, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's like, it's already happened, Paul. Like we're already there. Yeah.
And the same thing is going to happen to like, Jack, your point, there's so many websites out there. They're never going to have a team behind them that's going to go, oh yeah, let's like, what is it? 70% of it's still WordPress, right? Like those people aren't going to go update the WordPress website to make it more usable. But I totally see a future where WordPress comes out with a plugin that monitors user frustration scores and then changes the damn thing for you. And so like that delta is going to close. It's going to close. I don't think people are going to close it. But the idea of the interface being where people come, like us as people are the biggest constant in all the variables we're talking about. And we will always want an interface that we click through. And the interface should be designed to be the tip of the spear of the key decision points. I don't know how we're going to get there, but there's going to be a long road of that difference where the AI in the browser does make a huge impact. Would that be because of the UI or like, even little browser differences? But yeah, to answer your question, Paige, I just feel like it's a non-issue.
On your WordPress point, that is actually a really great example because if WordPress manages content primarily, right? It's a blog. First and foremost, it's a blog. And if WordPress were to come out with a new version that supports WebMCP and out of the box, and people don't even know, they're just like, okay, there's a search tool that's baked into my WordPress site now. I don't even know that it exists, but when I bring up my side panel AI, it's going to hit that thing and get a much more robust search as opposed to like trying to navigate, find the little search button, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That to me, like that's the framework doing its job of adding value to the data that I put into the system. Right? It used to just format the data as HTML. Now it's giving, or even like in some cases, like exporting as JSON or whatever. Now it's integrating with the AIs really well.
I was going to say something similar. I think the question is going to be like, is there an increasing shift in consumption that is just like surfaced via non-traditional browser interfaces? It's like, hey, if you want your blog to be read, 20% of readers aren't really browsing around the web anymore. They're just prompting, and that's like how they interact with the internet primarily, or using an assistant of some kind. That's how they interact with the internet. Like, okay, then if you're a blog author and you want your content to get out there for whatever reason, like, I don't know, who knows how like marketing and monetization, all that stuff plays out. But like, I think that could be the driver. It's just like, does the content or the whatever shopping experience or whatever, like, are you as a store like, oh, some large percentage of shoppers are now just, in a agent driven flow of some kind. You need to surface to them to get sales that will move people towards something pretty quickly. Like the business motivation will be there. And then it's like, maybe is it still go through the browser with some augmented thing? Or is everyone writing their own MCP server that gets delivered somehow? Like, I don't know. But I think that'll be the motivating factor one way or the other at the end of the day.
Well, question for y'all. I mean, do you do like, I know I do this a lot. Do you use like Claude or GPT to do searching on stuff, to ask it like, hey, what's this? What's the best for blah, 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 blah?
I like almost exclusively now.
Yeah.
I very seldom just Google something anymore.
Sure. Yeah. Paige?
Yeah.
When it comes to actual web development tasks, yes. But if I'm just researching like a new pair of shoes to buy or the best socks or something like that, I'll probably still go to Google first and just look for sock reviews or something like that.
All right.
Probably the same as Paige. I love HTML.
Maybe I should preface mine. If there's something very specific I know I need, but I'll still Google it. But if it's anything at all nebulous or anything before where I would have appended Reddit to my search instead, now I'm prompting for it.
And that's the thing. I know people who are normies, like my niece. She has an ongoing relationship with GPT and talks to it every day. And I'm absolutely sure that she asks, what will be a good thing for this? And it's going off and doing some searching. So if she's doing that and your average consumer is sort of shifting towards using AI for these kind of searches, then whatever's going to make your product show up on an AI search, that's where you want to be for the future. And I've definitely seen companies where it's okay, we put out a GPT skill and now we're getting a lot of referrals from that because
that's what I'm saying.
We're the first.
Driven.
It's traffic driven. It's okay, I'm going to ask you, what's my best website for hosting blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to trust it. I weirdly trust when Claude gives me a recommendation.
It's the Reddit
My wife and I had an anniversary dinner. I'm like, hey, I want a restaurant like this. And it picked a really dang good one. And I was like, okay, cool. There you go. Next time I need a restaurant recommendation, I know where to go.
It's kind of I know we're talking about the slopification, use your term, but there's also I think we are in an era where it was hard to find legitimate feeling reviews of things. So again, back to my append Reddit to the search. So I think people would do that because they would look for something that felt even if anecdotal, it felt like there's an expert in the domain giving me insight. And I feel that the agents have kind of done that now. It's kind of I can use that as my little expert in the domain I'm looking for, whatever it may be.
If you want to get into skateboarding or whatever, right? You go and do a Google search for top 10 skateboards. You're going to get that god-awful, crappy article that's got tons of ads in it. You can't even look at it on mobile because your mobile browser crashes.
Yeah, the cookie consent thing.
Oh my God. It's awful, right? And it's obviously just AI-generated slop. And you have no idea whether
garbage.
Whether the top skateboard is actually the top skateboard or they just paid for this article or whatever. Whereas, when I talk to Claude, it can actually reference okay, on Reddit, they say that this is, this is a great thing for the Ollie switch, blah, 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 blah. And you're okay, cool.
Yeah,
great.
Actually that's a good point that I hadn't really considered because when I do research like that for the best skateboard or whatever, I will usually end up going through 3 or 4 different sites and looking to see if there are common things that keep coming back up that different people are recommending. And that's usually how I'll narrow it down. But yeah, if I could get an agent to do that for me and also, like you say, reference where it's getting this material from. So it's not just confidently telling me with no bullet data points behind it that it thinks this is a good one. That seems useful. I will try that in the future.
Then you should use Claude because GPT is going to give you ads eventually, I guess. Supposedly.
Did you guys see Anthropic's Super Bowl ad?
Yeah. Yes, I also saw the AI.com one where I went immediately to AI.com because I'm like, what? AI.com. And it was a 500. Freaking 500. The guy paid for AI.com, paid for a Super Bowl ad, and the site 500s. Chef's kiss. Yeah.
Do you think ever there will be a reason that people will choose certain browsers because of the AI features that those browsers have? Could that be a differentiator in the future? We all think they're junky right now because they are, and they're all doing the same thing with the sidecar and maybe that knows about the different tabs you have open, but doesn't really do well filling out forms or doing research or stuff. But do you think that in the future that might be a thing? Like the way Google became the default search engine because it was just so much better at doing actual relevant search results than everybody else.
Okay. I'm going to just transition into my hot take here because this is my whole shtick.
Okay, here we go.
Let's put on our Word Google hat for a minute right now. You have all these browsers driven by agents that are interacting with your services and your Google. And I feel if Google wanted autonomous systems using their products to do things, they would have built APIs around them that were usable already. Like your Google, they would have built a flights API that you could actually use and a Gmail API that you could actually use. But Google doesn't want that. They want you using their service. So I think the era of autonomous browsing, being able to use these tools is not probably going to be super long-lived. I think Google's going to do, my prediction, is Google's going to do whatever they can do to make it so the only way that you can use agents to interact with their services is if you are using their agent. I think this is going to be Google's move going forward, is like the way in which you want to use these services, you're using Gemini. I think we're going to get into an era where like CAPTCHAs or like browser-based restrictions, like, hey, you can only use Google services if you're using Chrome and we have like a profile on you and we can see that you are a person. I don't know for certain, but my money right now would be on us at least sliding that direction a little bit. So I think we may kind of be in a heyday right now of like anyone being able to write their little autonomous browser that can go interact with all this stuff. But I'm not sure if that's going to continue long term if the services which you are using are operated by someone with an offering themselves in that space.
I completely disagree.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's because of Google doing the WebMCP thing. It's like, I think that they understand that this is going to be a thing and they see it. Again, their whole deal is ads, right? So they just, they want you like interacting with the web.
Yeah, but you're not serving an ad if you're just saying, hey, agent, go book this. I, as a human, never see an ad on my Google search results in my Gmail on you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
If they're not getting my behavioral patterns or able to interact with me, and maybe it won't matter. Maybe the cat will be out of the bag and they'll have to play nice. But I think that they do have a motivation there, whether they act on it or not, to like make it so you got to kind of use their thing to interact with the ecosystem.
Well, okay, let's take like the flight example. Like, okay, so I'm on random orbits or whatever, right? And they've got WebMCP and Chrome is connected to that. And so I got my sidebar that's got AI and I got orbits.
Okay.
And I search for flights and Chrome understands that I'm searching for flights, and Orbis gives me some numbers. Flights, blah blah blah. But then the AI is like, but hey, I know how to get better flights than this. I mean, and then that sends you back over to Google land to go and use their flight reservation service. Blah 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 blah. Right.
Yeah. So you think they'll be more motivated by surfacing their referral links to other agents that are not them?
Yeah, they just want to be they want to be in the conversation. Like they want
their cut that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the conversation with the user when they're going off and doing flight reservation stuff, like you got to be in that conversation because that's where the money is. So you got to keep yourself in that conversation, and I think that that's what they're doing because they're seeing like search is moving over to agents for sure.
Right,
like
totally.
The number like Google's search engine's going down, agent search is going up because of exactly what Paige is saying. It's like you go to these sites and they're garbage, they're hot garbage, and you really want something that's actually going to like understand you, understand your search, and go and get you the data that's specific to you. And really, only an agent can do that. But they need to be still in that conversation somehow.
I think it probably depends on if Google thinks that the other players in a given domain are giving them a real run for their money. Because I think you're right if it's like, hey, they want to get in and get that last click and the agent says, hey, no, come back to Google Flights to do the booking, sure. But like with Gmail and I don't know, Google Calendar and these other tasks, I feel like the move is going to be for them. Like, we want you in our suite. We want you in the ecosystem. So like, yeah, I mean, again, who knows? But I think that the market has shifted a little bit. Even in your example of flights, I'm not convinced that they're going to want. My question then would be like, well, why don't they surface like a Google Flights API now that gives you a link that's like obfuscated that to click on it, you have to the user has to eventually see the referral link. That doesn't exist, right? They could have built this tool to make it so people could build browser extensions that automatically check flights prices and like, hey, Google's giving you this price. You got to click this link to get it. And it happens to be the Google referral link. And they haven't done that. I don't know the business, I guess, of Google Flights well enough to say why.
Well, I don't know if they have or haven't, to be honest, because I mean, I've used a lot of Google stuff recently, just in terms of their APIs, just for demos and things.
Yeah.
A lot of their stuff has APIs on it. Like, all the Places stuff, the Google Places API. They do make you do the backflips of like the OAuth stuff, which is
yeah, it's kind of got to be in their world. Like Gmail's pretty tough. We have some tooling we built that kind of does it.
Yeah. But you got to do the OAuth thing, and it's just a super pain in the butt. But,
it doesn't really feel like it's made to be super consumable, I guess.
Yeah. And maybe that's just because Google's a massive corporation that, like, that's the thing.
It's not worth it for them to surface it. It's very possible.
Or they're just like slow.
Yeah.
Could be.
More concerned with security than usability. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Gmail, when was the last time we really got like a Gmail overhaul? Like 5 years ago, maybe? Yeah,
I get that like Gmail will ask me if I want to use Gemini to help write stuff. And I'm like, no. So I just keep telling it, no, I don't want your AI features in here.
Really?
Sorry. Yeah. I feel like I never closed the loop to bring this back to the question of like, will people choose their browser? I don't think it's inconceivable that we end up in a world where there's like more services that are a little bit more browser locked. Like it's more a pain in the ass to use Google services if you're not in Chrome, because they've decided like, they don't want autonomy interacting with systems in ways that they don't intend. But we'll see.
Cool. Well, with that, since Noel has already given us his hot take, let's take a quick ad break and we'll get the rest of our guests' hot takes. This episode is brought to you by LogRocket. LogRocket provides AI-first session replay and analytics, which surface the UX and technical issues impacting user experiences, and where your users are struggling by trying it for free at logrocket.com. All right, since Noel has given us his hot take, which was very interesting. Thank you, Noel.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Paul, would you like to give us your hot take next?
Sure. Mine is that voice is an underrated medium of communication. So I have a Twilio number hooked up with voice ID for me, so only I can talk to it. And it has just been the coolest thing ever. And every single person I've shown this to has laughed in my face. Like, I'm not even kidding. They're just like, why would I want that? This is so dumb. I feel like I'm in a bad call support center. And I'm like, I am literally, I'm looking at my team's PRs in my Mazda. I pressed the Siri button and I said, call Ziggy. And it's looking at PRs. And it's my voice because 11 Labs does voice ID. I mean, like, that's incredible. And the reason, and I was thinking about like, why is there this difference? And I mean, it's a few things, but the reason why I'm so excited about it is it unlocks other time in my life that can be high caliber operating time. Driving the car. If I can operate at a high caliber while I'm driving the car, incredible. Like there's a Home Assistant app for Apple CarPlay, and I used to geek out over that. Like, I could like I live in an old house, so I'm like, I can like turn on all my smart plugs, send messages to the infrared relays, have them like repeat the on signal to all my electric radiators, turn them all on. My house is warm and toasty. My carpets are heated. Now I just call Ziggy and I'm just like, make it hot, in the car. And so I really like the idea of trying to find opportunities where I am otherwise idle or doing low caliber stuff and try to turn that into like a high caliber time period. And voice is just a killer medium for pushing that boundary.
Yeah. I agree. I've used Claude in the car and I think it's great. But I got to say, the number one thing when you said that was like, wait, you gave Ziggy your own voice, your voice.
No, Ziggy has a different voice. It has voice ID.
Okay. I was like, geez, because you can use 11 Labs to clone your voice. I'm like, wow, yes. I would have never thought of giving my own voice assistant my voice. That would be like creepy as heck. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Thanks.
No, it's just security.
Make sure you're not like a serial killer. I talk at myself in the third person.
Nice. Jack, what's your hot take for this week?
As always, I'm not going to do a technical hot take. I'm going to say that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is the best Game of Thrones content that we've seen in many years since the original series.
Yeah, we've got to watch it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Is the season over yet, or is it still ongoing?
I think it's got another episode, but man, it went from like kind of warm and cuddly comedy thing to like serious Game of Thrones, like action. And I was like, whoa, okay, yeah. And it's funny too, because they knew it and they only used the Game of Thrones like title music, the dun 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 dun, at this one scene at the end of the previous episode, because it's like, we're doing it again. This is Game of Thrones, boy.
Excellent.
My hot take is going to be the opposite of Paul's, where I think that we need to disconnect more. I think that we're all getting pulled into these AI spirals of like, where can I use it? Everywhere. My phone, my computer, my car, my smart glasses, whatever. And it just seems like there's a lot of burnout that is surfacing from the ability to access AI agents everywhere all the time already. Like I'm seeing it on Twitter, which I know is not a great indicator of the rest of the dev world, but on the Twitter sphere, like people are talking about their mental health is breaking down. They're talking about their AI addictions where they go to bed and they look and they wake up and they check their agents in the middle of the night to make sure that they're on track or they've accomplished things, and people are feeling burned out. So I think that a lot of what drew us to web development as developers in the past, which was like solving problems ourselves and using our brains and like that flow state, is disappearing really quickly because we can let agents do the thinking for us. And I know that we can't go back to the artisanal code ways because employers are just not going to stand for that in this day and age, but just try to be a little bit more mindful about what you're putting your agents on and when you're actually checking them. There are working hours for a reason. And even if your working hours are very specific to you, try to take breaks, try to not check them, try to give yourself a mental detox every once in a while. I don't know. I'm trying to be more mindful of this too, because we're busier than ever before, but are we actually getting value out of it, I guess, is the bigger question. Or is it useful to us in some way? I just got to keep asking myself, is this useful or is this just novel and like more busy work because I can do it faster?
Yeah, we're definitely changing from being coders to being reviewers, basically. We just review code all day long. And that's a different skill. And it's a different vibe. You know, it's cool. We can make a lot of stuff, but like you have to figure out a way to, not to mourn the loss of the coolness that was like the moment of joy when your code actually worked and it did the thing that when it was like, wow, that's great. Now it's like, oh, actually, okay, now I'm reviewing something and I've got to somehow find joy in that, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah. We're only 2 months into the year and who knows what the rest of it's going to look like. It's going to be wild, I'm sure. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I think that's going to do it then for this episode of PodRocket. Thanks to everybody who listened. And thanks as always to our panelists, Noel, Jack, and Paul for joining. We hope you enjoyed it and we'll see you on the next one.